First of all, we have the approval of the minutes of January 21st. First is our organizational meeting. Do we hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Archie Craig seconded. Gary Hoffman made the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now for the regular minutes, do we hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Helen Meckes, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any public comments in relating to the agenda? Okay, any new business? Okay, thank you. First of all, at the request of the Planning Commission, I'd like to entertain a motion that Hanover Engineering review the environmental impact statement of Nestle's application. Do we hear a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
It's made by Carrie Crum. Do we hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Helen Meckes. Is there any discussion on that? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. I'd like to introduce Jason Smith with Hanover Engineering. Jason's at the end of our table. He will be making some notes tonight and certainly have any questions as they become necessary. And welcome, Jason. Before we start, let me explain that Nestle's will be here offering information on the various sections of their application. There will be some time allotted after each presentation to ask questions specific to that portion of the presentation. Keep in mind that this presentation is for the benefit of Eldred Township residents, the Board of Supervisors, and the Planning Commissions. And it will help us as planners to better understand the proposed project. I'd like to say that we certainly appreciate Nestle's being here. They've already made this presentation once, and unfortunately there was not a large group to hear the benefits of their project, and so they have agreed graciously to offer that again. We like to maintain, and as a planning commission, we're going to insist that we maintain a certain level of civility, and that we keep your questions in regards to the information presented. There will be time after the entire presentation to ask any additional questions you might have. I'd like to introduce Attorney Tim Weston with K&L Gates. He's Nestle's attorney on this project. He will be introducing the various presenters and giving you a short, brief background on what they're going to present. So at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Attorney Weston, and appreciate it.
One more thing, what was the name, Nestle's lawyer's name? I didn't catch it.
Attorney Timothy Weston.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Tim Weston. I am counsel for Nestle Waters North America. I'd like to briefly explain how we would like to proceed in terms of providing the presentation this evening. Here with me tonight is Eric Andrus, and I'm going to ask each person to sort of stand up in order so you see them. Eric Andrus, who's the Natural Resource Manager for Nestle Waters North America. Ed Davis, professional engineer, who's the project engineer. Lou Vittorio from EarthRes Group, who's the hydrogeologist. Earl Armitage from Pannoni, the traffic engineer. And Rob O'Neill of Epsilon Associates, who did the noise study. To try to keep this organized, what we're going to do is, in order, go through the general review of the application, what's its contents, and that will be done by Ed Davis. And then we will have the hydrogeologist talk about the water withdrawal aspects in the study that was done, so the issues that are related to that, the Vittorio will handle. And then Earl Armitage will talk about the traffic studies that were done, and finally Rob O'Neill will talk about the noise studies. To lay background, the proposal is to undertake a water extraction use on property which is owned by Gower Estates in the commercial zone as designated by the Eldred Township zoning ordinance. The contents of the application, this is probably one of the longest applications I think that the township has received, is in 3 volumes plus a set of maps. The volumes include the application forms, a narrative, a set of affidavits, proof of ownership, site plans, which are oversized plans, erosion sedimentation control plan, a stormwater management plan, a environmental impact statement, a sound level impact assessment, a traffic study, a hydrogeologic study, and additional supporting information. One of the questions that was asked at the last Planning Commission meeting, in which some of the people here attended, but certainly all of the planners attended, was what was the maximum use of the facility? And we want to answer that question very clearly. The proposal for the water withdrawal is an average of 200,000 gallons per day in any 30-day period. But as part of the regulatory requirements of the Department of Environmental Protection, they will set a maximum withdrawal limit equal to that which was tested, which was 170 gallons per minute, which is 245,000 gallons per day. So over a month, the average can be no more than 200,000 gallons per day, and at any 1 minute cannot be more than 170 gallons per minute. Those are the 2 constraints. And our traffic engineer will talk about what that means in terms of the studies that he conducted. They were within the boundaries of what he conducted. But we wanted to make that very clear because we know some questions had been raised as to, was there ever a maximum? And yes, absolutely, there is a maximum. It goes with the territory of regulating water withdrawals. What I'd like to do is ask Ed Davis to start out by explaining the overall application and the layout of facilities, activities, development that would occur at the project site. And so Ed, if I could turn to you.
Thank you, Tim. I think I might set this up here so that I can use a pointer to some of these exhibits. It might help. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can't hear you back there.
Is there a way to turn the volume up? Or I can try to talk louder. Does that help? Okay. Just say something if my voice starts lowering. This project is situated on basically 82 acres of property owned by Gower Estates LLC. The property is located along just south of Kunkletown Road and along the east side of Chestnut Ridge Drive. This is just a cover sheet of the plans, but Kunkletown Road is at the upper part of the site, and Chestnut Ridge Drive is along the left side of that plan. The work that Nestle will be doing on the site is predominantly at the northwest corner where the existing trucking garage is situated now. There'll be 2 production boreholes that's situated more in the middle of the site. You can see where I'm pointing here on the map in this area. And those 2 production boreholes the water will be piped down to the truck loading facility down in the northwest corner where the trucking facility is now situated. This is an aerial view of the property. The yellow lines depict the zoning. All the work that we'll be doing on the site is situated in the commercial zoning district. There are some portions on the southern side of the property that's in the AR district or the agricultural residential district. But all the work that will occur with the production boreholes and the load facility will be in the commercial zoning district. This is an overall picture or boundary plan of the property. Again, most of the work is going to be situated here in the northwest corner of the property. These little blue circles in this area where I'm pointing are existing wetlands on the property. Buckwaw Creek is running pretty much along the northern end of the property through here. I think everybody knows where Buckwaw Creek is. Let me move over to a site plan so I can show you the features of it or all the facilities. This map shows Chestnut Ridge Drive right here along the left side of the plan. There's an existing driveway that's used now by the trucking facility, and that will be the driveway that's used for the new spring water loading facility. So we will enter that existing drive the same location where the trucks do now. The existing block building, the garage, is located in a large stone area in this whole vicinity that you see. We'll be constructing a new loop driveway that will go behind the garage, circle around to the north toward Buckwaw, and then turn again so that the tanker trucks are heading toward Chestnut Ridge Drive on their way out. In the middle of that property, there'll be a new small load building. It's about 600 square feet, and there'll be 2 stainless steel silos, one on either side of the building. I can show you a quick elevation. Let me go over to the, that's basically what the building will look like. It'll be a masonry block building with stone spacing and a slate style roof, and the 2 silos are next to it. This is a rendering it's a very accurate rendering. The new load building is situated right here. You can see the 2 stainless steel silos next to it. Mr. Gower's trucking garage is situated in the back there. Chestnut Ridge Drive is off this map, but it's to the right. So the trucks will be entering to the east, circling around the building. We have to put a new retaining wall in there for grading purposes for the maneuvering. And you see it circles around, comes back around, heads again toward Chestnut Ridge Drive. The trucks stop right in front of the building. Trucks get turned off. They won't sit there and idle. The truck driver basically, he'll go inside the building. After he'll go inside the building. There's a control panel in there. They hook a hose up to the truck. The control panel tells some pumps to turn on. Truck fills automatically, a set amount. Pumps turn off. All the pumping equipment is inside the building. So once the truck's loading, the driver unhooks the hose to the truck, starts the truck, and he heads back out toward Chestnut Ridge Drive, and then heads toward the bottling plant in the Allentown area. The loop driveway is situated like that so that the trucks can make the full turn safely. They can be straightened out when they get in front of the building there. the site plan and the ordinances, we developed a site plan with, of course, with the ordinances in mind. There's setback requirements from the property line. There are buffer requirements from creeks, wetlands, water bodies, and all those buffers have been adhered to. Buckwalk Creek's along here. There's a 75-foot buffer from Buckwalk Creek. There's a 50-foot inner buffer, 25-foot outer buffer. There's also 75-foot buffers from the wetlands. Those are adhered to as well. So the site's restricted by Buckwalk Creek and the wetlands. So our working area is between Buckwalk Creek, the wetlands, and Chestnut Ridge Road. But all the setbacks have been adhered to for all the building setbacks. Lot coverage as well. I think there's 60% of lot coverage allowed. We're down to less than 5% of lot coverage. All the setbacks were well and above what the setback requirements are. There's also other buffers, landscape buffers. We comply with those buffers as well. We've added some, we have a landscape plan here. We've added evergreen landscaping along the driveway, between the driveway and Buckwalk Creek, which will help for glare and visibility during the times of year when the foliage isn't on the trees. There's also another buffer we placed on the south side of the property.
Water, right?
On the south side of the property, where there's some homes up top, that'll screen the facility as well with that. And there's a lot of natural buffers on the property as well with the existing trees and ground cover there. This is a lighting plan as well. We have 20-foot tall light standards around the property. We've made sure that there will not be any spillover of light onto adjacent properties, so all the lighting will be contained on site. Just going to need a couple more minutes. We've developed a stormwater management plan and an erosion sediment control plan for the project. So there is a stormwater collection system collecting all the runoff from some off-site as well as all the new paved driveways and the gravel areas. The stormwater will be conveyed to a new stormwater detention system. You can see this in basically an orange color. It's an underground system that will hold back the water to ensure there's no rate of runoff increase. And there's also infiltration that's occurring on here to make sure the volume's controlled as well. And it ultimately will flow out into Buckwalk Creek where the water goes now. But there will not be any increase in the rate of runoff from the property. There's a lot of water quality measures on this as well. We have oil water separators. There's other devices they call snouts. There's, like I said, it's being infiltrated as well, a lot of the stormwater. So this will comply with the NPDES requirements. Everything has to be approved through the Conservation District and DEP. There's a floodplain on the property as well. You can follow this dark line that runs through the property according to the FEMA maps for Monroe County. We are not putting any fill in the floodplain, so we've ensured that there will not be any effect on the existing floodplain. We took it a little bit further. We studied there's a detailed study that FEMA did on this site for Buckwalk Creek. We looked at those flood elevations with the profiles, and we've also determined that the 100-year floodplain is actually a little bit different than what's shown on those maps. It's closer to Buckwalk Creek in most of the area, but regardless, we're not putting any fill in the floodplain, so there will not be any increase in elevation. That's a requirement by the township's floodplain ordinance. Yeah, I hope that gives you a pretty good overview of the site development of the project. I'll put the rendering back up. It shows a good view of what this will look like after it's constructed. Miss anything? Oh.
I'm glad I limbered up this morning. Do you want us to go through all of the presentations and then do questions, as we did at the last meeting?
Do them at the,
I think while they're fresh, I prefer.
Okay.
Here, I'll have that.
At this point, we'll take questions, but specifically for Mr. Davis, not pertaining to the whole project itself, but specifically for the most recent presentation. And we'll do that through every section of it.
And that mic there, you just need to turn it on, and if you would, give this your name.
Good evening, Don Tenera. I don't live in the township anymore, but I own land in the township. Since I own land on the top of Blue Mountain, heading up in Smith Gap Woodlands, I have some concerns about my water level dropping down. So my first question is, how many gallons are you going to carry in the trucks? What is the capacity?
There'll be time for that, but at this point it's strictly questions in regards to the most recent presentation, because what we want to do.
That is in the most recent presentation. I'm concerned about the weight of the truck coming down Chestnut Ridge in the ice and the snow, and the bridge it's going over, which has a state capacity limit.
And there's another presenter will just specifically traffic and loading concerns, correct? Yes. That will be addressed. And I'm not trying to, I just want to get through the presentations as a whole, and we'll take questions specifically for that. And this is pretty much the civil aspects of the project, and as far as traffic,
Why don't
weight,
you just address it now then?
because we want to get through those presentations.
Okay, but this is a safety concern. If a truck can't stop at that stop sign, and anybody's coming in either direction, east or west, and the building that's at the end of that stop sign.
At the end of the traffic report, we'll take your question first.
All right, I'll
Okay?
be back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Don Moore. I don't know if this gentleman knows, do you know how many gallons each of the silos holds? Or is that for somebody else?
I can answer that one.
Okay,
It'll be approximately 30,000 gallons per silo.
okay, thank you.
30,000.
I have one question. With regards to the pumping operation, what's going to actually power it? Is it going to be electric for the extraction and for the facility, or is there going to be some generators in some manner?
All the pumps, there'll be pumps at the boreholes and pumps inside the building, that will all be fired by electricity. There will be an emergency generator on site. They'll probably be propane fired, but it'll be fully powered with electricity. If there's three-phase power there, we'll bring in three-phase. If there's not, we'll deal with the single phase.
Okay, propane powered, I'm assuming that propane tanks and everything else is addressed already in what you submitted?
Yes, the site plans show where the propane tank would be, and that's for the emergency generator.
Could you please give me the height on the silos?
In the application, we've indicated that they will be 40 feet.
Do you have any idea what Eldred's ordinance requires?
It allows 50 feet.
Have the wetlands been totally delineated by the Army Corps of Engineers at this point in time?
There's another environmental person here that can answer questions about the wetlands.
Will that be later?
Yeah, and the wetlands have been delineated. I don't believe that they've had the Army Corps come in and do a separate jurisdictional determination, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I think an Army Corps jurisdiction will be required, though, will it not?
We are not impacting the wetlands. There's a slight temporary impact on a wetland for a water line, just for a water line construction, but all the wetlands are not being impacted. We've complied with all the buffer requirements in the township.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question on the height. You're probably right. You are probably right. It could be 40 feet. I thought I saw it was 45 in the book, but I may be wrong. But question: do they have to be that high? Because they sure don't fit into the character of the surrounding area.
Water silos they can vary in height, they can vary in diameter. Typically silos like this are around a 12-foot diameter for shipping purposes. The 40-foot height is, a height that will give us 30,000 gallons for the operation. They are stainless steel. They'll always look like that. They don't rust. What you see there as a stainless steel silo is what it'll look like years from now.
You would think you were living in an industrial area, though, when you sit on your front porch and look at that. I mean, that's not conducive to the area. Plus, what protection do you have for people who have buildings right around there if one of them fails?
The amount of water that comes out of those silos is 30,000 gallons. That will easily be dissipated on site. It will not cause any trouble to buildings off site.
I don't believe that. I have buildings very close to that. I'll call you, leave your number so I can call you when I can remind you I have water in the buildings.
Okay.
Kenneth Hilbert. I've lived here for almost 40 years. And every time a new home was built and they had to drill a well, I saw some things happen in my own drinking water. Now, you're putting silos in this facility. What about the rest of us? Should we have silos too, in case we need water? Because that's what you're taking away from us. You talked about the wetlands. The way you're gonna pump water, there ain't gonna be wetlands here very long. And you're saying something about the excess going into the Buckwood Creek. I see at times during the summer, the Buckwood Creek is just a trickle. There won't be no Buckwood Creek if you're taking 200,000 gallons a day out. And all of us depend on our drinking water. I mean, you're taking water away from us. Three times I heard the word benefit. Where are our benefits? We heard that 3 times when this meeting was called to order. Where are our benefits? We've paid taxes here for all our lives. What do we have? We're going to have worthless land. And if we have to drill another well, we're going to hit sulfur. Do you want to drink water? Why don't all of you over there sitting, why don't you move into our township? Okay? Yeah, move here. And then go along with your plan. Or better yet, you swap your homes with people here. Yeah. Then we'll see how this comes to work.
This in your town.
Yeah. Find somewhere. Go out to Nevada where you can dig all you want to try to find water.
We certainly can appreciate the passion. We've seen passion at numerous meetings.
All right. Where's our silos? He's gonna put silos here. Where's our silos? Are we gonna get silos?
What we've asked them to do tonight, and first of all, they in this case, they've made this presentation before. The Planning Commission asked them to give it again. And as I said, I'm encouraging civility. I understand.
I've been very civil.
I understand that. But what I'd like to do is, because there's several presentations to be made here tonight.
I think we can end it right here. It's done, as far as I'm concerned.
What about our presentation?
Yeah. We're speaking for ourselves.
You're absolutely right. And there's and any as we mentioned at most of the meetings, there is a method through the zoning hearing board that any individuals with standing, in other words, individuals that they feel have been harmed, have that audience in front of the zoning hearing board, and they can make application to speak in front of the zoning hearing board, of which their first meeting is going to be next Wednesday. And I believe a similar presentation to this will be performed next Wednesday as well. At which point, I doubt at that point there'll be much time for comments or questions except from the zoning hearing board. But Attorney Martinez will have some type of form of which residents can fill out, state briefly their standing in regards to what's
You're not
going
answering
on.
my question.
Ask it again.
Where's our silos? That's what I want to know.
Well,
He's going to build silos here to take water out. What are we going to do when we're out of water?
I don't want to answer.
He's going to move. We aren't.
I don't want to answer their questions, but the silos are there for the main reason that they have to fill tanker trucks
Right.
up, and the well won't produce an enough volume at that rate in order to load a truck. And I don't want to speak for you, but that's the purpose of a silo, to present a reservoir. That's why your local fuel oil company has a big tank, because if they had to depend on a pump to load each and every truck, they wouldn't be able to do that. So you have a large tank to act as a reservoir. So in this case, their tanks are acting as a reservoir. It sounds like I'm defending them.
Yes, it sounds that
Definitely
way.
does.
And
Definitely
you want to
does.
mention benefits 3 times. I wrote it down in my little black book. 3 times you mentioned the word benefits. I don't see any benefits.
There'll be a time for those type of questions to be asked towards the end.
Okay, well, let's hope the next guy up to the microphone there mentions some benefits for us.
Yeah, I know.
And I was just asked, did you repeat, do you have his name? Yep, we have, we're all set, thank you.
The last set of questions went to, I think, probably one of the more fundamental concerns that most of the people have expressed in prior meetings, which is what happens to the water in this community? How does this water withdrawal affect folks in the community? And for the presentation on the hydrogeologic studies and the evaluations on those questions, I'd like to call on the professional geologist who did the studies, Lou Vittorio.
Jim, I have a question for Mr. Davis. I don't know whether everyone's done Mr. Davis.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
just a couple of questions. The first one is the lot is going to now host multiple uses, which is allowed under the zoning ordinance, but you have to basically treat each use as if it complies with the zoning ordinance as if it was a separate lot. I have, for the first time, seen the big plans tonight. I did not see, and I haven't gone through them all, I did not see in the application where there was an analysis done to show, to demonstrate that each of the uses complies with the zoning ordinance. In particular, I noticed that the truck shed, and I presume that operation is going to stay where it is, and it looks like it's very close to the tanker loading building. Have you worked that out, whether or not they both comply with the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, that comment came on a recent letter we got from Hanover Engineering. the uses and setbacks and whatnot that came from Brian Cucker. I did look at it. We will be responding in writing to that question. To give it in a nutshell, yes, we do comply. If you look at the setback requirements between structures, we do comply with that. Probably the one that's closest is the silo height of 40 feet. The next structure has to be at least 40 feet away from the highest structure, and we do comply with that as well. As far as lot sizes and building coverages, we do comply with the multiple uses on the property. So we will address it in a written response, though.
When do you think you'll do that response? I want to know when we have it, in terms of our decision-making process. Roughly, if you know.
If I remember correctly, there were about 5 pages of comments from Hanover engineers. And on this particular issue, it's going to be addressed in the first day of the zoning hearing board hearing next week. That analysis is done. Some of the other questions require some other information, but we'll address it at that time.
Are you going to do a response letter to
Yes.
Hanover's letter?
We'll do a response letter, and it will come back to the township. I assume it will be shared with the planning commission. It certainly will be shared with the zoning hearing board.
Is there going to be any type of legal document between the users on the property as to any common maintenance items? Will there be any common maintenance items between the users on the property?
Let me explain what the relationship is. Gower Estates LLC owns the property. Under the option agreement that Nestle Waters has entered into, it would get a long-term lease for the portion of the property where the 2 boreholes are located and the truck loading station. It also provides for restrictions on other development of the property in order to protect the watershed. Mr. Gower and Gower Estates retains the rights on the other parts of the property. All of the driveways are, it's recognized that they have the right to use the driveways as they are now. It's all going to be under the same Gower Estates ownership as it is now.
Do you plan to subdivide the property or file a subdivision?
We do not plan at this point to file a subdivision. The house is actually occupied by Mr. Gower's son.
There was a reference made at the last planning commission meeting, special meeting, about whether or not you have access rights on a public road. Is that something that you've looked at all or not, or have you?
The driveway into the property directly accesses currently an unnamed township road which goes to Chestnut Ridge Drive. That's an existing direct connection that goes across nobody else's property.
There's 2 properties I think that you're going to somehow have some kind of control rights over for watershed protection. Are those properties, are they part of the proposal right now? Are they being handled independently in terms of how you're going to control them?
All of the properties in question are Gower Estates properties. They're all part of the same lease. There's no development occurring on those other Gower Estates properties, so they are not included in our count of area, but we are controlling them for purposes of controlling the watershed and not having adverse development to the quality of the watershed.
Tim, in terms of development, is this property, once it's improved, going to have a significant tax assessment value? Is it going to bring in real estate taxes at all, or is it going to be marginal in terms of the development?
Mr. Gall, I cannot tell you how tax assessment works. That is not one of my fields. And there certainly will be more value in this property than there is currently, but in the I can't make the estimate of what it is. That's not my field.
I understand. What about job creation? Will there be any jobs that will be located on the site of the, of the development because of the new infrastructure?
The answer to that is no. There are no jobs at that location. It is not designed to be a manned location except for those who come from time to time to maintain it. But it's not a factory. It's not a plant. It's not even a store.
It's a sin. It's a sin. You're not creating jobs in this town that you're coming in and destroying. It's a sin. Sorry.
Excuse me. The more interruptions we have, the longer this is going to take, so that's okay.
They can hear you in the back.
Okay, Tim, just in terms of the people, that's okay. Tim, in terms of the people who are going to be on the site during the operation, will everyone who will be there, will there be Nestle employees, or will there be other subcontractors or other people who will be at the site when it's operating?
Well, Mr. Andrews can join me on this, but my understanding is currently Nestle has only 3 trucking companies that it contracts with. It has a very restricted group of contractors that are allowed to carry its water. And so it would be Nestle employees and any truckers who've passed the tests to work on Nestle projects and are on with those contractors. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe now I call on Mr. Vittorio.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, members of the Planning Commission and residents of Eldred Township. My name is Louis Vittorio. I'm the principal hydrogeologist at Earthres Group. I'm a professional geologist licensed in Pennsylvania, and our firm was tasked with evaluating the hydrogeology of the site and determining the sustainability of the withdrawal for the site. Our team of geologists and hydrogeologists were at the site. You may have seen us out there. Ed had briefly described the site. I think before we get into it, what I would like to go into, since our main goal is determining the sustainability of the site, is to talk about some of the basic concepts that we look at in determining sustainability of a site. One of the first concepts that I wanted to go over with you is the water cycle that we deal with through the whole process. And basically, there's several components of the water cycle. Most of the water that gets into the basin is via precipitation, and how that occurs is through evaporation from the oceans and lakes. It goes into the clouds, forms clouds, and then rains down as precipitation, as rain or snow. The precipitation over the land then will come down off the land as either runoff or will go into the ground as groundwater flow and make its way down gradient, down slope, and discharge in seeps, springs, or discharge to streams. Those streams in turn will discharge to rivers, and again the rivers will discharge to the oceans, and then the cycle repeats. So in the purpose of this is to actually drill down further into what we have in the sub-basin, the general water cycle. And that is, here's a depiction of, say, a water basin, and it's a graphic depiction right out of a textbook, but if you look at the site, you could say that this would be the Buckwa Creek, and this would be the hill going up the site to the east on the Gower property, and perhaps the unnamed tributary. And I can explain some of the concepts that we have on the hydrologic cycle. Rainfall occurring on the mountain will then go onto the ground and go as runoff down the slopes, and also seep into the aquifer. And it's depicted on this cross section here. It shows the aquifer at the in this block model. And in the aquifer, the water moves down slope just like the surface water does. And part of that it forms, and when it doesn't rain, the streams still flow, and the flow out of the streams into the model, or out of the model, is what's determined what we look at as base flow. So what is the base flow of a stream? So the stream ultimately gets its flow from the recharge from the rainfall, and the base flow is an estimate of how much that recharge is. So in the absence of precipitation, the streams still flow, and the flowing streams is a indication of how much water is coming out of the aquifer at that time. So we look at the base flow components in the hydrocycle and look at stream gauge data to determine factors of recharge, and to look at what is going into the aquifer, what is coming out of the aquifer. And again, that is a cycle that is driven by precipitation. And in Eldred Township, we have approximately 50 inches a year of precipitation, and that is what drives it. So when we're looking at what we're permitting, we are permitting portions of the available base flow that's driven by precipitation, and we consider it in drought times. So that is what I want to get into in our discussion. So, and really, as we go through this process to the permitting agencies, with the Delaware River Basin Commission, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, they will look at this water cycle. They will look at the base flow and consider what volumes can be taken during drought times. So they look at the site already and consider volumes during drought. So without a little bit further ado, I want to go into then the studies that we conducted geologically and hydrogeologically at the site to determine that sustainability based upon the precipitation cycle and the water cycle, and determine ultimately again what the sustainability of the withdrawal was. This is figure 4 from the report, and it may be difficult to see back there, but basically the site is here. Here's the Buckwalk Creek. The fire hall, I believe, is right here. We're right here tonight. The site is roughly oriented east-west, and it goes uphill. The topography goes from the unnamed tributary, which is north-south, that flows to the north of Buckwalk Creek, and heads, and then the topography heads to a higher elevation to the east, up towards the crest of Chestnut Hill. The geology of the site is what we call a series of folded sandstones and siltstones, limestones that are of Devonian age. And I have just a quick demonstration of what would that be at the site, looking at that. So we have a sheet of paper with the rocks were laid down initially horizontally, and looking eastward at the site, the rocks are folded into a series of folds up gradient of the unnamed tributary in the area where the boreholes are. So in the southern portion of the site, or like I say, the northern portion of the site, the rocks are folded like this, which is called an anticline. So when you look at this, you have layers of rocks, and in this case we have some blue sheets in here that would represent what the aquifer layer was. And then as you go to the southern part of the site, they actually are folded into what we call a syncline. And how that affects the investigations that we did, that the rocks are also oriented. So you may hear me talk about strike and dip of the geology out there. The strike is, if this is a plane of rocks that you might see on the side of the road, the strike of the rock is in this direction, and the dip of the rock is towards me, so it's an angle. So at the site, we have a series of folds of rocks that trend to the east, and they also dip and plunge to the west. So if you look up there where the aquifer is, we have a series of folds where rainfall happens on the mountain, falls onto the folded rocks, flows down the mountain towards the unnamed tributary, and discharges as springs, and also along the stream and in the stream, unnamed tributary. So that is kind of just a picturesque way to explain the geology. Again, it's folded, and if you look at the lines on the map, you can tell which units they are. The other main feature with the units that we show is that the main site area is underlain, and the aquifer that we're yes?
What do you mean by units?
I mean geologic units, ma'am. Thank you. It's a great question. So, in the geology, the differing units may be a sandstone is a unit, a limestone, a clay unit. So at the site, the aquifer unit that was the target of the investigation was the Palmerton sandstone, which on here is listed as DP. And the Palmerton sandstone, you can see this fold here. This shows the axis of what I determined what we determined was the anticline of the site. So the rock where that fold is, the rocks are folded like this and plunging towards the stream. The Palmerton sandstone, as you move down the site, is actually overlain by the Buttermilk Falls clay unit, which forms a confining layer to the aquifer, and I will get into that in another slide here. So in doing the site geology, we looked at generally where the anticlines and the synclines were, looked at where the Palmerton was, and we prepared a aquifer test plan submitted to and approved by the DEP, and based upon that, and based upon the map geology from the United States Geologic Survey, we planned an investigation which included the installation of 17 wells on site. If you look at this, you'll see these little circles, and each one of these circles represents a drilled well, similar to a well that may be drilled for your home with an air rotary drill. We also had set up monitoring points for the testing, and then the wetland areas. The wetlands were mapped, and monitoring points were put into the wetlands to monitor the response of the wetlands to the pumping test which to conduct. And so we had 13 on-site surface water points, and then we also had 15 off-site points. And I apologize for the scale of this. Again, it's in the report, which is available online. But at some distances over a mile, we had residential wells that we monitored. So here's our site in the middle with all our concentrated monitoring, and with approvals, we were able to put monitoring points, say, farther out here to the west. There was a point to the north, and also to the northwest. In all, there was 15 off-site wells that were monitored during the testing that we did. And that is the next thing to talk about. We conducted aquifer pumping tests. So we drilled the wells, determined a yield with them through doing what we call step drawdown tests. So you drill a well, how much does it yield? You put a pump in the well, you pump it at various levels and determine its drawdown and how much water the well can supply. Once that was determined, we did 3 constant rate pumping tests, first using borehole PB2, and that was a 72-hour 3-day test. We followed that. That was done in a dry period of the year. We actually did it in the fall, where it was ideal testing because precipitation this fall was about 20% below average at the time we did that. And that was a key point to what we wanted to do. We wanted to assess during dry times what the withdrawal would do. So one of the reasons we wanted to get it done in the fall is that it was such a dry fall. The first test then was followed by a test on the second well, production borehole 1, and both of the wells were pumped at about 90 gallons a minute for 3 days each. Thereafter, a test was conducted on the combined boreholes, pumping borehole 1 and 2 at a combined rate of 138 gallons a minute, which equates to about 200,000 gallons a day. And we looked at the effects on the aquifer from those testing, and gathered the data from the off-site wells, the on-site wells, the wetland piezometers, which were all recorded during the test. Most of them were recorded with electronic measurements, so we put a device in the well that would record on 10-minute or hour intervals and do it routinely, so we didn't have to send somebody out to all the wells all during the test. There were some manual measurements done where people may have come out to your well and collected a water level measurement during the test.
Excuse me, would you restate the amount of the joint pumping test? I think you said yes.
So each pumping test was conducted at approximately 90 gallons a minute, and the joint pumping test was conducted at 170 gallons a minute, which is actually above the proposed withdrawal at the site. So the wells, so the pumping rate at 170 gallons a minute is approximately 245,000 gallons a day combined, whereas the proposed withdrawal is 200,000 gallons a day.
Hey, can I say something? Yeah, this is bullshit. You're screwing us. My house is out of water. Maybe I'll come see one of you guys and you guys can give us all some water. I hope you got enough for everyone. 'Cause I'm sure I'm not gonna be able to-
Nestle has a well protection agreement that would be in place to protect water supplies.
Yeah, go fuck yourself. How's that?